Let's tackle the next price control with the price floor, which is a government set minimum price that can be charged for a good or service. So the government comes into this market and says, I think the prices are actually too low. Let's go ahead and raise the prices. Let's artificially raise the prices. So just along the same vein, where is an effective price floor going to be set in terms of the market? It's going to be set above the equilibrium price. So before, the equilibrium price was PE. This is what firms were able to charge, but now with the price floor being set in place, this is what the firms and corporations can now charge. But remember, anytime prices are going to be set above equilibrium, we notice that QD is going to be less than QS. So a price floor is inherently going to lead to surpluses or excess demand. And once again, because we are above equilibrium, we are not at our happy little place, it is going to have impacts on our ideas of efficiency and welfare. So essentially, who is the government trying to benefit in this instance? They're trying to benefit the supply side, or whoever is supplying up this particular good or service. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the price floor. Price floor. And in terms of the price floor, it's not as prevalent as the price ceiling, but there are still a few examples of the price floor. So price floor examples. So in terms of the price floor, the best example of a price floor is actually the minimum wage. Minimum wage. And in terms of the minimum wage, who is the government trying to benefit here? They're trying to benefit whoever supplies the labor. So this is actually one of the instances where you and I can find ourselves on the supply side of the market because we supply our labor, but firms and corporations are going to be demanding our labor. And the minimum wage basically just says that, hey, this is the lowest amount that you can pay your particular workers. So here, the minimum wage is set above the equilibrium wage rate, which is probably going to be a lot lower than what we have here in terms of the minimum wage. So in terms of Florida, the minimum wage is roughly about $8.50. So here, $8.50 for the price floor. The equilibrium wage rate would probably something be a little bit or a lot lower than that. A little bit more of a typical example with price floors, we do tend to see it a lot with agricultural products. So let's go ahead and write that one down as well. So agricultural products. So a lot of farmers have a lot of their crop being sold at the price floor level. So being a farmer is a very unstable job because you have to deal with the weather, you have to deal with consumer demand. Your crop is basically at the mercy of the weather and also a lot of other variables. So here they need some type of stable income, and the price floor will tell them exactly what they're going to be getting for selling their product. So as we said before, this is going to have a few impacts in terms of our ideas of efficiency and welfare. So who's the government trying to benefit in this case? The government tries to benefit the suppliers. So government tries to benefit the supply side of the market. So we can say producers / firms, or just suppliers in general, suppliers. So remember, in terms of the minimum wage, we are the ones that are supplying our labor. So we find ourselves on the supply side there. But what happens to our ideas of efficiency and welfare? We notice that, hey, because prices are now higher, consumer surplus is going to be lower. So consumers don't like this impact, or the demand side doesn't like this. We notice that producer surplus is going to be higher now. High prices are above equilibrium. And finally, because we are not at our happy little place, the single intersection of supply and demand, we notice that dead weight loss is higher. So we have some type of inefficiency within the marketplace, which leads to total surplus being lower. So essentially, as we can see right here, we notice that, hey, just as the same with the price ceiling, it is going to have impacts in terms of our ideas of efficiency and welfare. So once again, we see the impacts with this. Along the same lines, what happens if the government actually does make a mistake once again and sets the price floor below equilibrium price? And as you sort of imagine, it's probably not going to have any impacts in the marketplace. So here, let's go ahead and build up this question for completion. What would happen if the price floor is set below equilibrium price? Is set below equilibrium price. So once again, the idea of this question right here is, what happens if the government makes a mistake and instead of setting the price ceiling the price floor, above equilibrium price, they set it below, as in this example right here. So price floor. So remember, the price floor is a minimum price that can be charged for a good or service. So in this instance, there's nothing that is stopping the marketplace from reaching its equilibrium point right here. So this is the lowest price that they can charge for a good or service. But once again, we're going to reach our equilibrium no matter what if the price floor is set below equilibrium price. So here, once again, we consider this to be non-binding. Non-binding or no impact on equilibrium. So non-binding / no effect. So with this instance, the government has made a mistake and we just go back to our equilibrium as normal. So that just tells us that in order for us to have an effective price floor, it needs to be set above equilibrium price. So an effective price floor. So remember, effective or binding price floor is going to be needed to set above equilibrium price. So once again, an effective price floor set above equilibrium price. Remember, effective meaning having its intended impacts into the marketplace, which means artificially raising the price. With all of this, remember that effective and efficient, once again, does not mean the same thing in economics. The last thing that we can sort of talk about in terms of these price ceilings and these price floors is something that is denoted as a misallocation of resources. So misallocation of resources. And a misallocation of resources, it happens a little bit more often on the price ceiling side rather than the price floor, but it just tells us that we are no longer being allocatively efficient. So whoever desires the good the most may not necessarily be the one who gets that particular good because we are being inefficient in both of these price control cases. So formally, misallocation of resources occurs when a good or service is not consumed by the person who values it the most. By the person who values it the most. So here, a misallocation of resources occurs when a good or service is not consumed by the person who values it the most. So take an example in terms of New York rent control, in terms of the price ceiling. I'm sure that there are a vast majority of people who would actually be willing to pay higher, or they value this rent controlled housing a lot more than other people, but due to the price ceiling being set into place, they may not necessarily be able to get that housing. So here, a misallocation of resources just tells us that we are no longer being allocatively efficient in any case. So with all of this, we've learned about price ceilings, we've learned about price floors, and in terms of the entire chapter, we just took a look at the idea of efficiency and welfare. So just to wrap this up, this is Paul Samuelson. He's a pretty big jerk. But in terms of chapter number 4, we talked about the idea of consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus, our idea of efficiency and welfare within the marketplace. We learned how to calculate these things out in equilibrium and also out of equilibrium, so doing a little bit of geometry and algebra, and then taking a look at a few cases of market failures. So why are we inefficient? Why does it lead to some type of deadweight loss? And then, of course, just as we did in the previous 2 videos, we took a look at the government intervening within markets with price controls, with a price ceiling and price floor. So this will do it. I'll go ahead and see you in the next chapter.